Is it on? Are we rolling? Oh, like, should I be talking now? Hold on a second. Hi, everybody. I'm Tiffany Craig, clearly unorganized, and in the newsroom with Richard Rosso. He is a financial expert, and he's taking your questions today. And I know that, well, I spent probably more money than I wanted to for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there were plenty of other people that spent more money than they wanted to during the holidays, too. So, about $700, is that what Americans spent for gifts?
About average. And again, I think people felt better this year. Mm-hmm. There seemed to be, what would I call, a cheerier animal spirit. People felt like spent.
Spirit.
That's what you call it. You know, you just feel good.
Oh, sure.
And you take it out on spending. You go out and you buy some things that maybe you wouldn't have done before. So we saw a little bit of that exuberance in spending this year. So.
And we put that on credit cards.
We did. We are
what were we thinking?
We are racking up the credit card debt back in the United States. We're back to pre-Great Recession levels on credit card, or balances outstanding on credit cards. And you have to keep in mind, as the Fed raises rates, you're going to see higher rates on your credit card debt, and that's something you need to be aware of.
So we're going to kind of jump ahead and then come back, because what we're really hoping is that all of you that have tuned in, and those of you that will be jumping on Facebook, will have questions, because that's what this entire Facebook Live is about, getting some of your questions answered at no cost. That's nice, because it's so rare these days you get anything for free. But before we talk about how to get out of debt, let's talk about how to avoid getting into debt. And we have kind of a ginormous cheat sheet back here of different things that are recommended. And I'm going to kind of read them off, and then we can talk about them.
Sure.
So start with financial trickery. All right, we'll come back to that, because that's confusing to me. I'm just going to read them all, and then we'll start talking individually. Okay. Don't focus on interest rate, focus on dollars lost.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah.
If you're using credit cards to meet a standard of living, change the standard.
That's a tough one.
Sure.
That's a tough one.
Live the strength, minimize the weakness.
Well, it's hard to get out of debt.
Well, yeah.
It took you a while to get in.
Yeah.
And people feel like they're tackling a big glacier with a toothpick, because they feel like they're so buried.
That's good.
That they can't get out. But it's just like when you want to take on exercise or work out. It doesn't happen overnight. So it takes you a while to get out of the debt.
Yeah.
But after a while, you feel better about it. You start focusing on the strengths, as opposed to, oh, I can't do this. You can do it. And it sort of snowballs on itself, and people wind up accelerating getting out of it. But it takes a while.
Sure. And I keep looking down at this computer, because I'm looking to see if any of you have questions. The last thing, though, on this list is be aware of your worst credit card habits and write them down. I like that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go back to the top, though.
Okay.
What is financial trickery? What does that even mean?
Well, because you have to stop thinking how good it feels to spend and the immediate gratification that you get when you buy something.
Okay.
So what I tell people to do is you got to trick your brain into thinking differently. Like when you see those pair of shoes on sale, and you go, oh boy, those shoes are $100. Well, go ahead and tack on 28%, because if you're going to put it on your credit card and you're going to pay interest on it, you didn't really get a deal. And you're not paying $100 for those shoes, right? You're paying $100 plus the interest rate. So I have people take out and calculate if they're going to carry the balance on their credit card. Hey, look at the true cost. And what people do is step back and trick their brains into going, wait, I don't really need these shoes. Or
that's almost like paying with cash. I tend to do that with cash, because you're much more conscious of what you're buying.
It is having like that cash mentality, but you are using your credit card.
Yeah.
But think about paying all that interest over and over and over again, and then those shoes don't become they're not as appealing as they were before. So you got to stop yourself from thinking immediately, and that does take a little bit of trickery. And I'll tell you, whatever you tell your brain, it will believe. So
just keep telling it to it.
Yeah, like take a step back, and that does work.
Okay.
And that's all kinds of debt.
This is more of a comment than a question. Someone said, I need to stay away from Starbucks. Because we spend a lot of money on those quick coffee runs or quick whatever run.
Yeah, but you know what I tell people all the time is you hear some of this financial dogma, this advice that says, oh boy, if you cut the latte out, you'll be rich. That's sort of not true, okay? There are bigger things for you to tackle, and if you enjoy your coffee, go ahead and do it. But because you having that coffee is not really going to hurt your financial situation. But you spending a lot on credit cards on a lot of different things will hurt. So you gotta choose your battle.
Yeah.
to some degree.
Yeah.
So you can have people that spend, you know, they eat out a lot, but then they'll go to Starbucks once in a while and they feel guilty about that. But yeah, I understand. At least you understand where your habit is. That's a good thing. You understand where your weakness is,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Where your spending weakness is, and then you can detect it, whether it's Starbucks or I go to Target all the time or whatever it is. So.
So
it's good to have the awareness.
there you
It's good to
go.
have the
So for those
awareness,
of you
yes.
who are just joining us, we are talking about getting out of debt and avoiding falling into debt. Both are difficult, but you know, well, it's not difficult to spend, but it's the getting out of the debt part and then avoiding getting in. Somebody asked a very open-ended question here, so we'll just kind of have to go with this one.
Okay.
How should I budget? How should I budget?
Well,
Like, where do you start? Like, if you've decided that this is my year, I'm going to save money, get out of debt, whatever it is. How do you start?
well, I think a budget. First of all, a budget's a good thing, but it's tough sometimes because it's almost like sticking to a diet. You're going to break it. But I would tell people focus on what you use most of the time. So your smartphone could be a great advocate for you. There are so many great budget software that's easy to use. Like I use Visual Budget, and Visual Budget's free download, and it'll focus on the categories that you're weak in. So say you don't even want a budget, but you just want to have some form of money awareness. Like, hey, I think like the gentleman who wrote about my Starbucks, right?
Yep.
You just if I ask you right now, I'll ask you, Tiffany. You won't have to answer it.
Okay, I'll answer.
Where do you spend most of your money? You know right away what it is. You know where your weakness is, even though you may not budget.
Well, mine involves like household stuff.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you know, there's
But there's
the
got to be
mortgage,
things that
and
you
then
keep
there's a
buying all
lot
the
of.
time. But I mean, like the fun stuff that you buy. The people that focus on credit cards, they have one week. They know where they're spending a lot of their fun money.
I do a clothing rental thing every month, and it's like eating my lunch now. So I'm actually canceling in the next couple of days.
Okay, but that's almost like a budget act without keeping an actual budget.
What's that?
So what I mean is you're aware of where your weakness is, so you can cut that budget. Focus on the most weak spot you have. Like you know how much it is per month.
I do.
And then find a way to cut that down. Once you do that from the element that has the worst impact on your bottom line, then you can go ahead and use something very, use your smartphone. Heck, there's budgeting software all over the internet for free.
Yeah.
And there are great books. They're called Dome, D-O-M-E. They've been around since like the 20s. And Dome has this little ledger book that you go to Office Depot or Staples.
That sounds really old school.
It is. It's really, but there are a lot of people that I tell people, get intimate with your bills and your spending. Like if you start writing down how much you're spending, just sort of keep track. To me, that's almost a greater connect than using the technology, but we know a lot of people like to use technology, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
You can use mint.com, which is free, and download.
That's what I use.
Yeah, connect, and you know where your categories and where your spending happens to be. So the thing about starting it is just start, but pick a method that's going to be comfortable for you, that you're going to stick with. And everybody's different.
You make it sound so easy, but I think once you get on the right track, it does become easier. And then it almost becomes, this sounds kind of silly, but it almost becomes a hobby.
Here's where I keep my budget.
No. Can I look?
Yes,
No,
that's what I'm saying. But my budget, it's written in, it's here. I mean, you don't have to, and then I'll look at what I'm doing and how I'm spending my money. I'll allocate what I want to spend toward a certain category, and then try to stick within the category. I mean, this doesn't have to be rocket science at all. I think we make it complicated, but it doesn't have to be. I've been keeping budgets since I'm like 10. I mean, it just depends on how easy you want.
That sounds like you're bragging.
No, I'm not bragging. I mean, I always knew like where my money was going.
Yeah.
That's all.
So Sabrina asked a question, and my heart goes out to her because she
Yes.
says, how do I get out of debt by choosing what medical bill to pay first? And that applies to bills of any kind. If you have a mountain of bills, where do you start?
Well, especially with medical, right? With medical debt, that could be, well, debt itself can be financially devastating, but medical debt does tend to be financially devastating to your situation.
Yeah.
First thing you always have to try to do is, when you know you don't have the money, is negotiate with the lender as best you can. And there are many ways, or flexibility, or stipends and subsidies, especially for medical debt, but you've got to go back to the source. In other words, don't ignore it. Go back to the source of the debt. You're not going to be able to remove the debt, but they will work with you as best as possible to pay it down. That doesn't mean, I've seen people do this with mortgages. They're going to be late on their payment. You know, they try to avoid talking to the lender when you should be open and honest and say, hey, listen, I'm having an issue here. Most likely they're going to want to try to help you to stay on the property or to pay the bill and not try to avoid it, and then you're going to take your credit score is going to spiral, and you're going to get in a bad situation.
And so when it comes to what you should pay first, isn't there like a snowball and then an avalanche or whatever they're called? I know there's some kind of snow analogy for everything, I feel like. But what do you recommend? Excuse me, I got a bit of a cold. What do you recommend for people who want to pay something off and feel like they're making progress?
You know, part of it is focusing on the strengths versus the weakness. So what the snowball will do is, if that means you're going to start with your smallest debts first, the ones that you can tackle, right? And you're going to wipe them out. What that does is, as you cross them off, they're not going to make as big of an impact to your bottom line, but what they do is they start you in the mode, like chipping away. It's a psychological issue. So if I have $50 on this credit card and I pay it off and I move it on to the next and I keep chipping, that's the snowball. Avalanche is I'm going to hit my biggest debt first. Right? Because that's where I'm going to pay most of my interest. And I'm going to focus on that one. And what I tell people, if you're going to do that, try to find a way to do a balance transfer to a lower interest rate, or call your credit card issuer and say, listen, you know, it's a very competitive environment, by the way. I would like to negotiate my rate. Most people won't think to do that, but it does work many times. If you call and say, listen, I'm having a difficulty with this, can you lower my interest rate? Or I'm going to balance transfer out to my other card. What can you do for me? People have to take a stand. Okay, they're paying 28% interest. Okay? They have to, or 17% is the average, by the way, but we've seen cards from 23, 25, 28%. Is talk to the lender. You may be very, very surprised at them being receptive to helping you to lower the interest rate or do what you need to do.
I've made some pretty bad financial choices along the years. I'll admit. Like
Me too.
I've had a car repossessed. So, I mean, that's kind of the lowest of the low. Actually, for years, I would never even talk about it because I was so embarrassed that it happened to me. And
you weren't still in it, were you?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but I woke up and started looking in the parking lot for it and had to call the local PD, and they said,
it's very stressful.
yes, ma'am.
They took the car,
And one thing I remember from that time, that rock bottom time that I had, I was, number one, embarrassed, and I just felt like I'm just a number for these people. If I call them and try to work something out, I feel like no one's going to listen. But what you're saying is, they will. You just have to pick up the phone and do it.
And frankly, that is a possibility. Depending on how far in arrears you are, they're not going to, because they're going to, if you don't proactively do this up front, they're going to feel that you're trying to evade. Right. So then they're going to act. It's going to be more adversarial in what they try to do. If you're right up front having issues and you confront those, many times they will work with you. It all depends, because you will have a situation like that from time to time. I've seen it. But I will tell you, 8 out of every 10 times that people have done this, they have actually had people or a lender try to help, or not help by providing a cut in the debt, but helping you to find a way to make a payment stay as much in current as opposed to arrears as possible.
Terry Polk, hi Terry. Terry says, cut the credit cards up, keep one only. I never understand why people spend what they don't have. If it's not in your wallet or in the bank, then don't purchase on a promise you probably won't be able to keep. It's as simple as that.
Well,
one credit card?
Well, I mean, the concept I think that Terry's trying to relay is that, hey, you got to have some financial discipline, but that's the part. It's not, for some people, it's not easy to do. And for some, it's like, hey, listen, I understand, because guess what? They're not looking at, most Americans look at the monthly payment. Like, I've got $15,000 on credit card debt, and I only need to pay $150 a month, right? But then I'm looking at how much they're paying in interest over that period of the loan, which is tremendous, because we live by monthly payment. So the lower the monthly payment is, that's what we care about.
Right.
But yes, is that a great attitude? It's just like people that'll tell you, hey, listen, I eat right and I work out 4 days a week. And you're like, well, that's great, and that's commendable. But most people are going to have an issue with that. And I don't know if about one credit card. I think you could have more than one and then diversify how you use them, because the usage of those cards and paying them off and controlling them is really what gets your credit score up, because it's almost like you're trying to control the usage and spreading your usage, but you are very diligent with how you pay it off. Now, can you use one credit card for a lot? And I recommend this for a lot of your main purchases, because at the end of the year, they send you a nice report and show you where you spent your money. And
Sure,
that's a
and
good
that
way
helps
to
you keep up
So
with-
the question about how do I start my budget? Well,
Yeah.
the first thing is pull that statement as you get that year-end credit card statement. If you put a lot of your spending on it, and a lot
Yeah.
of people do this, they break it down into categories, and you can see the category of where you spend. I think I talked about this, that I had a dining out budget that almost passed out, and then I had to cut it back dramatically. Okay, so I'm like, this is crazy.
Because that can eat your lunch, literally.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so I knew where my weakness was, but that report really threw it in my face. So that one credit card as far as your main spending, but once in a while you want to use another credit card, like in a rotation, that will show it will help show a creditor that, hey, you're really good at managing credit overall, which is very effective.
I want to get to a couple of these things on this list here.
Sure.
I love this one because so many people struggle with this. If you're using credit cards to meet a standard of living, change the standard.
That's
We
the
do
toughest
that.
one, but that's the toughest one, and that's what most Americans do. We show that at our firm. We keep track of the gap in the standard of living because we haven't seen wage growth in 20 years, at least. And what's happened is you use credit to make up the difference in your standard of living.
Yeah.
And we see we are the most indebted nation in the world when it comes to credit card debt.
Are we?
Yeah.
I
As far as
guess I'm not really
outstanding credit
surprised by
card
that.
debt.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's to your point. It's we do see people that will find a way to reduce levels of standard of living. So in other words, you hit the fun stuff first, right? You cut the cable bill, or you. And a lot of people use online and they don't do credit, cable anymore. They're trying to cut their expenses. They cut their dining out budget and all the fun stuff. But then there are some people that actually have to cut the overhead stuff. That's tough because that requires possibly you downsizing a residence or doing something much more dramatic to meet where your wages are and your standard of living. That is a tough one to do. But there are people that have done this and have felt empowered by it because they said, hey, I cut my rent by 20%. I had to move, and we don't have the same nice stuff we had before, but guess what? We don't have the financial stress anymore either. But that is a drastic measure. I see 1 out of every 20 people do this, and when they do, they feel better about it. But let me tell you, it is not easy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that's an easy fix, but there are people who will do that.
So there are some people on here saying, I'm trying.
Yes,
and
that's important.
Some motivation is good.
You need an accountability coach. See, when you hear somebody
That
say...
sounds like you have to pay somebody.
No, your spouse, a best friend, someone who's not going to ridicule you, of course, and beat you down. But when somebody says to me, I'm trying, I got to give them a pat on the back and say, that's good.
Yeah.
Because now keep going, right? And then go through those statements with you, your credit card, or your progress, and let that accountability coach keep you on track. This doesn't have to be somebody you pay. It could be a really good friend that you feel comfortable with, and a spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, someone who will be there for you and say, hey, listen, we're going to go through your bills, right? Let's see the progress you made. And if you take a step back, they want to make sure that they're there. Believe me, that kind of motivation, that kind of person to be on your side as you go through this process is very, very important. So I'm very, when I see people are trying, that's all you can ask. But you do need someone that was going to try to keep you on track, and you don't have to pay for that. I'm sure there's somebody that cares for this person very much that can help them with that.
Zach Curry, hey Zach, he says, is it worth investing in your 401k?
It is, but not if you have credit card debt. And let me explain. So you can save for retirement all you want, but if you're paying 28% or 18% credit card debt, you're not going to get that kind of return in your 401k. So the thing is, you want to get the debt out of the way. So yes, should you invest in your 401k? Yes, but prioritize how you're going to do this. Do you have an emergency reserve with 3 months worth of living expenses in a checking or savings account? Okay, is your credit card debt manageable? If you got all that done, by all means, go ahead and invest in your 401k. But I would prioritize depending on where your debt levels are, because you're not going to earn the same amount of money in your 401k than you are going to be paying. Think about it. If I pay my credit cards, right, I'm automatically making a 17% return, right?
Sure.
Because I'm paying that off. I'm not going to get that in my 401k over time, just not. It's not a reasonable number.
I guess I've never sat and thought about that. That was a good question.
Think
Zach.
about how the money, yeah, it is. Because
Yeah.
think about how your money's got to flow through your whole life. We take our money and we segment it into little groups.
Yeah.
Like, I have to do this, but what about this? Your money has to go through your whole financial life. So you got to look at what's the better decision, paying the credit card debt or investing in the 401k. And it turns out to be that most of the time it's paying off the debt first.
Be aware of your worst credit card habits and write them down. What are our habits? The overspending?
Yeah. Like, what am I spending the most money on?
Okay.
Like, when I take that card out, where am I going? What am I spending it on? Okay? And find a way to cut that category as best you can. Because that'll make it major. Because not only do you have to pay off the cards, right? You got to stop the spending on the cards. Because then you're not making any progress, right?
Yeah.
You got to look at and we will tend to spend in I will tell you, everybody's got this one weakness or area they spend most of their money, whether it's clothes, whether it's dining out, whatever it is, that they have to cut it back. So that's why I have person in one sentence. I spend too much at Olive Garden or whatever. We go out 4 times a month. No, we're going to cut it to 2. I'm telling you, this is.
Do you like Olive Garden?
I like the breadstick.
I'm kidding. I do too.
I like the breadstick.
No, but that makes sense.
But that's so that and then keeping that with you. I use my smartphone and there's a note section and I can type it in.
Yeah.
So I know where my spending is, or if I find a new place that I like to go or eat, right? Then I'm wind up. Wait, I'm here again. I should eat at home tonight. Just being aware of it will change your attitude, because you have to. Not only are you going to stem the cut or reduce your bill, your credit, or your debt, you got to stop the spending on the other side. Otherwise, it's like it doesn't go anywhere. It's like a bucket with a big hole in it. You got to stop that.
So I read this, and I think I feel like I read it in this particular article. I can't find it right now, but we opt out of getting paper statements.
Yes.
Because it makes I have to run it through the. You know what I mean? I'm forever having to make sure that I don't throw it away, and I've got to. Hello, what's the word? What
credit card companies will say, listen, it's for the environment. Listen, they know that you don't look at your statement
of a reminder.
that way. Yes. And they
shred it. That's the word I was looking for. I forever get it, and I go, I got to shred it, and then I finally said, I'm opting out. But really, I should get it.
Yes, or at least find a way every month to print it out, or every quarter to print it out. Because once you get your statements ready, you're going to do what I do, is delete it. You get that email message.
Right.
That says,
they automatically.
whatever.
Yeah.
And you don't go through it. And what'll happen is you just it'll fall into some dark hole and you won't look at it again. So you got to get your attention on it. And part of that is, no thanks, I want the statements. I don't want it electronically sent. I want to see my statements every month. I know it's old school, and then maybe you can go back to electronic once you pay the debt down. But it's got to be in your face physically for you to really want to do something about it, because it's just how our brains and just how we work.
I think we've been talking for like 25 minutes.
Have we really?
Already.
That was easy.
I also have an easy button here. Just maybe you thought this was goofy. I love my easy button. If only paying off bills was like that easy.
I know. Unfortunately, it isn't.
So let's kind of wrap this up and just.
Did you buy that on credit? No, I'm just
kidding. It belonged to someone in the newsroom, and I claimed it one day.
Okay, that's the way to do things.
He left,
without
so we're
paying
good.
on credit, right?
Exactly.
Just take somebody else's.
So, some kind of final thoughts here for
Yes.
people who have kind of already dug the hole a little bit, and they're trying to get out. He's on the spot. Look.
No.
He's thinking.
You got to think about you got to accept the fact that it's not going to be easy, because people will get frustrated very quickly, and you don't want to get frustrated. You have to look at, that's why that snowball method sometimes is effective.
Yeah.
So if people will combine, they'll do a snowball where they're going to pay off their smaller bills first, and then they're also going to look at the expenses that they're spending too much and start cutting that down. And then write down those positive things that you're doing for your accountability coach. Write that stuff down. Hey, this is what I did this week. And that psychologically is, when they tell you how do you get started, you start. I mean, there's no magic to this at all.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's going to take 3 years, 5 years, 7 years to get out. But it's better than having 25 years of the credit card debt and what you're going to pay. So 5 years is better than 25. So everything you do is an action that's going to be important. It's going to be like a wave. So what I tell people is just try. It just like was said, it's very true. I'm trying. It's going to keep you more aware.
Yeah. You know what? I said we were leaving, but someone just popped in a question that I really want to ask. You might not even have the answer to this one because it sounds like Sabrina Lopez and her family are dealing with a tough situation.
Okay.
My husband lost his job December 22nd, and I was very worried about him cashing out his 401k, but we need it to live with a child who has a medical condition. So do you think it's okay to get it? I'm thinking we will save it and use it as needed.
The toughest part I see about 401ks and retirement accounts, which I don't like very much so, is if you have a hardship. Now, there are hardship withdrawals, so you should go back provisions. You should go back to the former employer. There should be a phone number that she can call and ask about this. But for the most part, it does. All these accounts are designed to do is tax you and or penalize you for taking money out, regardless of the situation. And that's very unfair because every time you take money out of the 401k, it's taxable and could be penalty, right? It could be penalized. So that's the challenge that I see. Years ago, I tried to initiate something where it said, hey, if you've been out of work or you have medical issues, you'd be able to take that money out tax-free or at least penalty-free. So listen, hey, if you need the money, be very, very sporadic or be very conscious of how much you pull out because it's going to affect your tax situation. But if you need the money, you need the money.
And I think just from that post, I feel like they really need it.
So again, you might have other methods of lower interest credit that you can tap first. There's maybe intra-family loans, people that in your family that can create something official for you to do. Your last resort should be tapping that 401k.
Yeah.
But if you need to do it, you need to do it. But you have to remember, though, how it's going to affect your overall tax situation because sometimes you wind up creating more of a tax issue for yourself as you take money out.
And you don't want that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And penalties.
Right.
So so it's 30% is going to be almost your luxury for taking the money out of your 401k. Think about it. Every time you take money out, it's a 30% hit. 10% on a penalty if you're under 59.5 plus another 20% in tax. So that's a big penalty. So draw from it as you absolutely need it.
Yeah.
But other than that, I would try to avoid that. But I totally understand where you're coming from. We've seen people have to do that.
Yeah. Richard Rosso, I told you he's good with money, and he's good talking about it and kind of making sense out of it for all of us who go through plenty of struggles in life, up and down with money.
We all make money mistakes, everybody.
So thanks to all of you who are on Facebook watching and sending us your questions. And for those of you who are trying to get out of debt and you're working on it, it's a slow process. Good luck from both of us.